Hi everyone, and a massive welcome to a very special live episode here on InfoSec Live, where we give you, our audience, the chance to learn from and interact with our industry's leadership. My name's Simon Linstead. I'm the founder of the InfoSec Live community and also your host for this show. And before we bring on today's guest, sharing stories and best practice over the last few months has led to 8,000 hours of our content being watched on YouTube by you, our amazing subscribers. So a huge thank you for your engagement. And thanks to your support, it's also led to the launch of our in-person community-driven events in the United Kingdom and United States, with a focus on knowledge sharing, networking, and absolutely no sales pitches. Please do check out our events page for more info. Link is in the description. But our next event here in the UK is on the 25th of May in Manchester, sponsored by Apex or IQ, before heading back over the pond on June the 15th to Washington, DC at the Cyberbytes Foundation. But meanwhile, back in the community, Precious, our community director here at InfoSec Live, has been organising group study sessions, CV workshops, networking sessions, job alerts, and so much more. So if you haven't, please make sure you check out the community. I think the link also is in the description. And again, if you'd like to offer assistance to the community, if you're a leader out there, please do reach out to Precious or myself. Try and help us make a difference to the cyber security industry. I'm blaming jet lag for that, by the way. So if I stumble on words a few times, I apologize. But if you don't have the time and you still want to support the wider InfoSec Live community, our scholarship fund, or maybe just buy me a cheeky coffee, which I could clearly do with, we do have a few ways you can show your appreciation. First up, the ability to purchase super stickers in the chat if you'd like your question bumped up to the top, and 3 tiers of membership allowing you to show your support in any way that you can. But whether you join or not, being here and engaging with our content is what really matters. So if you're watching this live, make sure you like and subscribe. We want to make these interactive, so also make sure you drop any questions in the chat. Okay, time for the show. So today, joined by Lianne Potter. She's a cyber anthropologist at the AnthroSecurist and head of security operations at a major UK retailer. She's also an award-winning cyber anthropologist and security transformation leader with experience in the retail, healthcare, finance, private and non-profit sectors. Her consultancy, the AnthroSecurist, enables teams in complex organizations to understand each other's motivations, identify barriers that have prevented good security practice in the past, and provides practical steps and insights to increase collaboration between the security team and the rest of the organization. She's also the head of SecOps for the largest greenfield technology project in Europe, where she builds strategies to create sustainable security cultures throughout the organization. Stop rambling, Simon. Let's bring her on. If I can find the button. Here we go. Massive welcome, Lianne. It's going to be a stumbly one from me today, I feel.
Oh, well, you know, it is for me Friday afternoon before a bank holiday. So, you know, I'm feeling the same. So don't worry about it.
Thank you. Well, funnily enough, my wife only reminded me about an hour ago that it is bank holiday Monday. So I'm a little bit excited about that too. But look, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. Before we jump in, we've got loads of people in the chat. Massive thank you to everyone again for jumping in. It really, really is appreciated. And it does really make these sessions very, very exciting and interactive. And a special shout out to my son, Alfie, who I saw in the chat a little while ago, who apparently has got a new job. So Alfie, can't wait to catch up with you after and find out more.
Ah, well done. Congratulations.
It's exciting. So Lianne, tell me about you. Tell me where you've come from and how you've ended up becoming the AnthroSecurist.
Yeah, well, probably for the benefit of some of your listeners. Anthropology is the study of what makes us human. So before I got into tech, I studied how cultures were formed, how they developed, and ultimately how they collapse, because cultures always do eventually collapse. But my specific focus was digital anthropology, which is the study of digital cultures. Now, I could have gone down 2 paths in my career when I became an anthropologist, and that was, you know, go to far-flung countries and understand, you know, distant tribes and things like that, which tends to be the kind of typical way that anthropology is done. But I was more interested in actually what was happening online and how we were developing cultures that way. In particular, I was interested in, probably showing my age now, there was lots of cultural goings on with things like Second Life. I don't know if anyone remembers Second Life. And so I was looking at how you apply sort of Marxist theories, and would we sort of develop capitalism in the same way online as we would do in real life and things like that. So I was very fascinated how online cultures were built in that way. And it all stemmed from actually being able to be paid to do that work when I became a project manager for a charity. And I was given a £5 million budget, and I was told to solve destitution in Leeds, which is the town I live and have grown up in. And wasn't given a brief how to do that, just told solve destitution. So put the feelers out there and said, I've got this pot of money to do this. Please send people my way. And what I was seeing is people coming into my service, and they were coming in, they hadn't eaten in days, they were about to be made homeless, or they were just totally the worst point in their entire lives. Maybe they had addictions and things like that. And when you dug deep into it, what was happening is the traditional sort of UK benefit system had all recently moved online. It had moved online kind of in a big bang way. Yeah. So people were going up to, traditionally what they would do is go to the job centre, which is a physical location, and we call it signing on. So you'd sign on for your...
I've been there, Lianne.
So you sign on for your benefits. But what was happening is these people were going into the job centre and they were told, oh, no, you don't do it that way anymore, and then pointed to a bank of computers and saying, that's how you do it. Not shown how to do it. So if you've never touched a computer before, if you've no experience of doing it before, that's a huge barrier for people. So people were just literally walking out, or they would be told, oh, well, there's free lessons at the library. But I don't know about you, but for some people, the library can be a very intimidating place. Yeah. And to actually go in there and ask for something like that, like train me up how to use a computer, that's a big ask. And again, people were disadvantaged. Now, that you were able to make claims via the telephone. However, at the time, it was still chargeable at 60p a minute. It took an hour before you actually got through to any person. It took an hour to do the whole process online via the telephone. If you have a pay-as-you-go mobile, which most of these people did have, that is unobtainable for you. So again, absolutely disadvantaged. So I was seeing people... organizations were moving straight to tech. Tech is going to solve everything. It's going to make everything easier. It's going to bring everyone, unite us all. It wasn't. It was disadvantaging the most vulnerable people in society. We were moving so fast and we weren't bringing these people along with us. And it wasn't the fact that it wasn't the traditional people you thought it would be. So using my anthropology, I started to talk about things like the digital divide. Now, the digital divide posits that if you are excluded from the internet and being able to access online resources, that you will be socially disadvantaged in some way. And, we saw that during COVID. Those households only had one computer everyone to do their work on and everyone to do their learning on, and had to take it in turns. The digital divide existed then and it still exists now. But it wasn't your traditional audience. So a lot of people think, oh, lack of digital skills is an elderly thing. That wasn't the case. People who were coming into my services were of two distinct age brackets. It was people from the ages of 17 to 25 and people from the ages of 40 to 55. And the reason why that is the younger demographic was people who were just leaving the care system. So they'd come of age during the care system. When you're in the care system, you don't get your own computer, you don't get your own mobile. Coming through the system, never used anything like that before, told to fend for themselves. And then the other age bracket was, people who had done probably manual jobs, never had to use a computer before, and now maybe find themselves, as jobs become more automated or companies, go into bankruptcy and things like that and redundancies, find themselves in a new workplace that's all geared towards people being able to be digitally literate. And so I, being an anthropologist, sort of studied this and tried to lobby the government to kind of make sure that digital inclusion was in the forefront. And I really wanted to actually really get hands-on with that. So I decided, how do I actually apply digital anthropology in tech in a really meaningful way? I'll teach myself how to code. So I spent my evenings and weekends teaching myself how to code using all free online resources. Didn't pay a penny, going to tech meetups, and within about 5 months, I was job ready to be a graduate on the NHS.
That's amazing. Sorry, I had to jump in. 5 months. Did you say 5 months?
5 months. It was a lot of dedication. I mean, I didn't see family and friends for ages, but I really wanted to get there as soon as I can. I was the oldest graduate there by miles. I was in my 30s and had a mortgage and stuff. But yes, 5 months ready. And I think one of the things that sold it, it wasn't, I did a tech test and everything like that. But one of the things that sold it was, I was going into the NHS and the National Health Service, for your American audience. I was going in there and I was saying, look, if you hire me, not only can I bring these technical skills, but I can actually say, are we making it human-centric, what we're designing? Because the purpose of the NHS is to be available for all audiences in the UK. And how do you do that if you don't have an understanding of anthropology and human nature?
100%. Yeah. I mean, couple of things I've mentally noted down there. I can hear myself talking back. Is that you or me? It's nothing worse than hearing your own voice. That's better. It's stopped now.
Okay.
Couple of things you said there. I won't dig into the NHS too much, but that's been flying through my mind. So my mum's at end of life with Parkinson's at the moment. I've had like a bike crash over the last few years. So I've had a little bit, and having 6 children, a fair amount of exposure to the NHS. And the digital transformation is still quite underway, I would argue. Still seems to be a lot of paper-based records kept and not much communication and collaboration between the departments. But let's not talk about government departments and moan about them. I'm going to go back to your first comment, which was that societies and cultures all end. Let's talk about that, because when you and I first spoke, I think I said to you, or you helped educate me on the amount of people who you can have in a social group, where that social group is kind of at an optimal level. And my concern, I mean, and the fact that globalization is amazing. I've built up friends, contacts all over the world, but it brings with it a lot of problems as well, doesn't it? And I want you to touch on that for me, if you can, Lianne, the dangers of having a global society.
Yeah, so the theory is that the groups start disintegrating once you go past 150 people. It's impossible for us to make and forge bigger connections than that. Strong connections, by the way. And that's why, in our early history, villages were small. We still made contact with people, but it was never any kind of bigger than that. And when you think about that in the context of, say, an organization, a big organization, then you can start understanding why perhaps sometimes communicating across the business isn't cohesive. It's just not in our ability to be able to forge that many connections, because a connection is based on reciprocity. So being able to mutually give each other gifts. Now, gifts can be, literal gifts. Sometimes I'll give the dev team a box of chocolates and some biscuits and stuff to kind of get them to do what I want. But the other kind of gifts is gifts of support, gifts of time. And in the security sense, I'm often giving the gift of looser security controls and things like that to be able to people to do their job. And it's about that back and forth. And once you get to a certain level, it's really hard to maintain, because you just don't have stake in the other person and their sort of their story, their journey, and things like that. And now that's not a negative thing. You might instantly think, well, shouldn't we all care about each other? You just can't. You just can't physically do that. There is a human limit. So the good thing about that, though, is not all relationships, you're 150 in your circle, for example, like you could have these relationships they're not always sustainable. So you're always kind of losing people, gaining people. So you're always fluctuating. So that's the good thing about it is, when you're ready to accept more people, it usually means that, some people have come down the, off the waistline somewhere, and you're able to do that. And in terms of, it's just sort of that natural cycle of cultures do need to fail, because they need to be able to adapt. And adaptation means that eventually that those sort of cultural groups will splinter off into their own individual things, and then new ideas will come. It will be about integrating with other groups and mixing that information. So cultures failing is a natural progression. Once a culture succeeds, you see it about, the Mayans, for example, is a massive example. They were the height of civilization. They couldn't do no better. We're still discovering things that we can't even get our heads around today, how they did it. But it still failed.
Do we know how it failed?
So theirs was based on a little bit like hubris in a way. And I think that's quite a way that a lot of societies probably do end up imploding in on themselves. Is, they got to a certain point where they were unable to sustain themselves with crops and things like that. They'd figured out quite a lot how to fell large areas of land and things like that. But I can't remember what the term is, but it's when you burn large area of land so that you can do crops the next year and things like that. They'd done that too much, and then it just caused disease and pestilence to
and then it causes damage to the soil system as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. But that was all kind of, someone decided that. It's not like, obviously, that's a human interaction thing with the earth. So someone decided to do that, as a society. Our decisions all have impact.
So let me just jump in there quickly then. So they destroyed one very small part of the planet where they were. What on earth are we doing to the world at the moment, Lianne? And I know this isn't security related, but I'd love your opinion on, can we fix it? What happens next?
Humans are interesting because we're one of the few species that are able to imagine a future.
Yeah.
We're able to think about consequences and actions, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're good at acting upon that. Case in point, if I've got a deadline, and I do have a deadline, the worst thing that this person has actually done to me recently is extended my deadline. So I've got until August. It was originally July. What am I going to do? I'm going to probably still, I'm not going to go, oh, great, I've got an extra month to do that. I'm actually going to probably just leave it another month.
Yeah.
Even though I know that I'll be stressed out, in July, rushing to do this. Humans just do that. We're very immediate goal driven. However, I think there will be a point where it'll be literally the tipping point, and we will have to say, okay, all hands on deck. And we did that.
So what you're saying is something awful needs to happen for us to be fixed. Yeah.
Yeah. And, COVID is an excellent example of that. We needed to find a vaccine. Instead of all this kind of secrecy, we opened up the scientific community and collaborated because we had to. We were in dire straits. We had to. I think humanity will do that again in some point. It's not ideal because we've probably done a lot of damage in the meantime, but it's just the way we kind of operate.
Absolutely. It's scary times, isn't it? There's so much that needs addressing on our planet at the moment. It's, again, not the topic of the show. So I'll drag my mind out of that gutter. And one thing you said to me, you said about the small social groups. And I said to you a few weeks back, we've got 4,000 people in the InfoSec Live community now. If that is the case, how does that remain sustainable? How can we still add value? And we've taken your advice on that, and we've started to break it up into smaller groups. So we've still got the main community, but Precious, who's in the audience now, has been building out a leadership section, an offensive section, a defensive section for newcomers, hopefully that people can then start to build rapport and relationships within. And as you said earlier in the show, once they get to a certain point, they can then perhaps migrate over to the next social group. And so fingers crossed, hopefully that will be successful. But going back to your career, so you mentioned we got up to the NHS. A lot's happened since then. So let's jump back into what happened next.
I joined the NHS and as a software developer, and it was doing my sort of AnthroSecurist, Anthropology sort of thing, going to meetings and going, yes, but the person. Eventually, I started getting pen test remediation reports as part of my software development work that I was doing. So, pen test would happen. We found something, and can you fix it, Dev, Lianne? And so I became fascinated with security. Now, the reason why I became fascinated with security was not necessarily the work I was doing, which was interesting, but it was the fact that nobody wanted to deal with security. Nobody in the business wanted to deal with them. And indeed, they were in a literal flaw to themselves, which was security locked, literal ivory tower as well, because it was literally, above us. And things like that. It was a very interesting setup. So as an anthropologist,
unapproachable, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So as an anthropologist, I became very fascinated by the fact that this was such an important area of the business. And, WannaCry had happened 2 years prior to me joining, which brought down most of the NHS at the time. And cost millions, if not maybe billions, to us, and untold harm to people's lives and things like that. But people still didn't see that as a really important part of the business. I just thought that was fascinating. So I kept putting my hand up for security work because nobody else wanted to do it, and begged for about a year solid the SOC to let me in as a graduate.
Would you say begging is a good strategy to get work, Lianne?
I made myself a nuisance for sure. I went to the top though. I went to the head of the SOC and the CISO, and I was just like, "Hey, can I come in and do some work for you?" and things like that. And I was very persistent, and then they let me in. And I could see why nobody wanted to talk to them. They weren't the friendliest of bunch, and even just getting them to say good morning when you came in was a task and a half. But after a while, I kind of proved my security chops. So my first task was I was a tier 1 analyst. And I was given a load of manual tasks, which mostly... Oh, sorry. Excuse my dog. She's just had the post come. Mostly manual tasks, which involved pulling stuff from various APIs. Well, it wasn't from APIs; it was from websites, and then digesting them into an Excel document. So being a dev, I was like, all right, I'm going to script this because this is taking me all day to do. It's incredibly boring. It's just copy and pasting. Scripted it. So the thing that took me a day every single day to do was one click. And so I saved them an entire week's worth of a person. And I said, what next? What are you going to show me to do next? So I helped them set up their SIEM solution as they were drafting that out towards things like GP surgeries and hospitals and things like that. So,
wow.
So that was a really exciting time, and it was a really great experience because the threat landscape for a big organization like that is utterly different to anything I've experienced before and anything I've experienced since, because as you can imagine, it's a lot of nation states quite interested in national infrastructure projects and things like that, because we were connected as well to teaching hospitals, and so research and things like that. So nation states are very interested in what people are working on at the moment. And I was there during COVID as well. And so seeing that kind of ramp up as well, particularly for university hospitals, people very interested across the world in what the NHS was doing there. I got headhunted for my next role, which was security transformation manager at an insurance company. They were deciding that they wanted to do security differently and wanted a more Anthro, which is people-centric approach to security. So still keeping my technical chops, which I'm very pleased to continue to do so. People sometimes think just because I'm mad on anthropology that I don't have the technical chops, but I think it's actually really important for me to keep both up. So I'm very much a techie. People often say, are you all for removing the tools? I'm like, no, I definitely really want all the tools, because the reason why the human element is so important is because it's the person at the end of the day configuring these tools, and it's important to make sure that understanding is there, that business-minded capability to be able to input these tools correctly to best serve the needs of the business.
Do you know, you talk about people in security. So I'm just back from RSA, and I walked that entire floor, and I think there were over 600 vendor stands at RSA this year, 60,000 people walking through. So I walked around and I counted how many of those stands focused on people and processes rather than just the tool part. And you're the one who's just said that the people are so important to the tool bit. And the answer is 6. 6 stands that focused on that. The rest was all sassy, zero trust, as you can imagine, buzzword central. And in my non-expert industry opinion, it's one of the things that's caused a lot of the issues that we see now, with the fact that budgets for security have been increasing exponentially over the last 5 years. But the threat vectors and the attacks, the successful attacks, have continued rising. And the definition of insanity is to continue doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results, right? How do we change that, Lianne? Oh, actually, JJ's just said a good statement. Everyone wants to address the symptoms, but not the causation, which is very relevant.
Oh yeah, totally. I think it starts with the security teams themselves. There's lots of reasons why security teams are the way they are, and I should say, there are some fantastic security teams. I don't want to tar everyone with the same brush, but in my opinion, and as my work, doing the AnthroSecurist stuff has shown, going into organizations and helping security teams with this sort of stuff, it really does start with us, because we have had to say no to a lot of things over the years, and there's a reason behind that. We haven't had the great tools that we've had. We are the most, still are some of the most underfunded, underloved, under-resourced areas of the business. Quite often our CISOs don't even really report into the execs properly. They're not considered as part of that board or anything like that. They're almost at the kiddies table. It's very frustrating. So we've had to say no to a lot of things in the past. And the reason why we've done that is because we've had to be very self-preservationist, because we've not had the resources to look at all this stuff. We've not had the resources to buy these tools in and use them appropriately. And in some cases, we still haven't. But the problem is that now we have a perception, security has a PR problem, really, and security teams do within the business, that we're the team that says no. I've heard things like, we put the no in innovation and Pope of Nope and things like
that. Business prevention unit is another one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I can definitely see that from a historical standpoint, but I think a lot of security teams really want to engage. They want to be seen as just as innovative as the rest of the business. I joke, they want to be seen as the cool kids as well, but they just don't get invited to the same parties. And, just like when you're a kid and you're not invited, or even, the parents force you to be invited to a party, it's not a good feeling. And so you kind of always feel like you're on the back foot. So I go into organizations and I, get security teams together, and I say, okay, what do you want your message to be? And so often it's, I want people to come to us sooner. I was like, well, what are you doing to enable that? What message are you putting out there when people do come to you? Is it just arms folded in a meeting going, no, I don't want you to do that. Not offering solutions, not offering, options or anything like that. If you're doing that, then people will not engage with you. It's all about perception. Outside of the day job, I'm part of an improv troupe. And one of the main principles of improv is, well, there's two principles. The first one is your whole job when you're on stage with someone is to make the other person look good, right? Amazing. It's not about being funny yourself. It's about making the other person look good. It's about setting things up so that they can knock it home. Funny lines, funny situations and things like that.
Yeah, you're the second security leader, Lianne, in 4 weeks who I know is part of an improv troupe. I met a lady in Tampa, Florida in March, at the end of March, who heads up an improv society full of security professionals. So it's obviously the way forward.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. But the other principle is yes and so yes and is a way for the scene to continue. Because as soon as you cut a scene dead, so for example, if I was doing a scene with someone and I came in and said, I can't believe you ate that cake, and then my scene partner goes, no, I didn't. Where do I go from in that scene?
It's the closed statement. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you need them to be able to go, yes, and I can't believe you did this and this, and you build on that. If you're always coming from no, where do you build on that? And really, you need to kind of look inward and think, if you're not getting the results you want as a security team, you need to be able to think, is it something I'm doing? And I don't think we do that very well. I don't think we're very retrospective in terms of that. Sometimes we have this perception that everyone else in the business is wrong and we're right, but
that's not just an industry problem, though, Lianne. Let's be honest. That's a society-wide problem. Before we dig into the work you're doing at the AnthroSecurist, because I know you're doing a lot of talks as well, and I want to dig into that in a second. There's been a few comments here I want to bring up. Alana, you've got two I want to bring up. First one, she used to do free tech tutoring at the library. It's amazing to work one-on-one to help grandma send an email or someone fill out an online government form. And Alana, again, before I bring the question up, this did make me chuckle. Very inspired by this topic, but also by Leanne's statement necklace. So
thank you very much.
bring that up. And then quick question for you from Harris. You've worked in lots of different sectors. What was your favorite one to work in?
Oh, I have to say, hands down, healthcare. So I'm very grateful for quite a lot of things for healthcare, but one of the main things I am grateful for is when I go and do working for organizations, you know, just as myself, not as the AnthroSecurist. At least I have some perspective and go, nobody's going to die if we do this wrong. I couldn't say the same working in healthcare, and that's a great focus.
Well, I suppose unless you work in OT.
Well, yeah. Unless, you know, the devices you're making are to do with that. But I have to say, hands down, healthcare. It was a great environment. I mean, from a security perspective, the threat landscape was a lot more interesting than most. But also, just there is a camaraderie there, you know, as a whole organization. Yeah, it's just wonderful. And I think we're very lucky in the UK as well that they really embrace things like behavioral science and things like that as their kind of driving force. You know, there wasn't a piece of work I could do in the NHS that didn't go through a user research or team at all. It was all about the end user, and to me, that's the way it should be.
Yeah, you're with my 3-year wait for my shoulder operation. You're restoring my faith in the NHS a bit, Lianne.
Oh, bless.
So let's talk about the work you're doing as the AnthroSecurist. What have you been doing, and what have you got planned? And how can people find out more about it? Would be the last question there.
Yeah, so the AnthroSecurist is basically it's more of like a passion project than anything else, to be honest. It's the Anthro from Anthropology and AnthroSecurist, so it's Anthropology security, and it's about using the techniques from anthropology in organizations. So, you know, I'll either go into organizations, I'll do talks for organizations, or write about it for organizations. It's about understanding why the culture in your organization is the way it is. As I say, so the first instance is usually a lot of introspective, looking at why the teams act the way they are. Because my main thing is before we can start applying the principles of anthropology, and I'll go into that in a second, you need to be in a good place to be able to come out into the world and say, hey, here I am. If you're not there, then it's going to fall on its face. So I when it comes to things like applying the principles of anthropology, we're looking at things like, as I touched on earlier, really embedding reciprocity in there. So the nice thing about reciprocity is that once you do it, people feel like they have the need to over reciprocate.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win, really. So I'll give you an example. My friend buys me a birthday present, and it's really thoughtful, like hits deep here. Yeah, really, really thoughtful. My first thought is, that's a really lovely gift. Microsecond later, the other thought is, what am I going to do to top it? What am I going to do to top it next year?
Yeah.
So it's not the fact that you've got, a really nice gift. It's the fact that you automatically feel obligated to.
And why is that? Why do we feel like that?
It's the magic of reciprocity. So the reason why you feel like that is because reciprocity is how we built relationships in our early evolution. It was literally, if there's a village over there separated by water, I'll give you a gift. And if anything happens, on my island, I know you're going to be there for me. And it's about just building that relationship. And we've just taken that on as we've developed. It still works to this day. It's a really easy, simple way of really forging relationships in any part of the organization. But from a security perspective, I've seen it work well with reviewing old security controls. So an example I've seen in the work I've done is there was a really weird security control which blocked Bluetooth from work devices. Now, the security reason behind that was, well, people could exfiltrate data via Bluetooth. Now, the business was coming and we were seeing lots and lots of PowerShell scripts to circumvent that. And they were being pulled from online. Now, these PowerShell scripts, they could have been doing anything. So the control was enabling people to do workarounds, right?
Yeah.
The reason why there was workaround was the dev team wanted to listen to the music using Bluetooth headphones. So it was almost a productivity issue, really, because you want happy devs doing the things that pay my wages, pay your wages, you know. But we were, as a security team, preventing them from doing so. So, you know, thinking about controls like that, and what I was able to do is saying, hey, how about I let you do this? And then, oh, thank you. We've been waiting for ages for someone to let me do that. No, it's fine. Now you start off with reciprocity, not expecting anything in return. But eventually, the more you sort of give, the more it becomes a give and take relationship. And so you will start seeing people show up for you more. And as that relationship builds, it builds stronger. And what you're really aiming for is eventually, once reciprocity gets to a certain point, it becomes a relationship of trust, which is perfect.
Yeah.
But also you start noticing that people feel more autonomous. Now, the reason why people feel more autonomous, and autonomy is a really good thing when it comes to businesses, because it's an extra pair of eyes on things, is you want people to feel autonomous because they have psychological safety to be able to ask questions. Now, often people circumvent security controls because they don't feel like they have the psychological safety to be able to question, why is that security control in place?
If you
Instead,
don't know, why would I bother? Yeah.
yeah, because they're the big bad security team. I don't want to talk to them. I definitely don't want to question why they've done something.
Then
And
they'll
so
talk to me. Yeah.
Yeah, so unless you've had that built that psychological safety, then you're never going to have that. And that's bad, because if you're building a culture of psychological safety with lack of psychological safety, when something does happen, and something will, when something does happen, you have lost those eyes. And I like to akin to it of like a meerkat. You know, one stands up and then they all stand up and go, something over there. You need that in an organization. And if you don't have that, you're screwed.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a comment here I just want to bring up from Glenn Wilson. Is reciprocity the reason why salary is less of a motivator than feeling appreciated? Good question.
Massively. You know, the studies that show, you know, your happiness level only increases so much as your pay increases. I'm yet to find that yet, but I'll happily take more. But you know, there is a point where, as long as all your needs are met, you know, you feel comfortable, happy, you know, you've got a roof over your head and things like that. You know, after that, you're looking for the next stage, and that is finding purpose. Now, humans are all purpose driven. We've had to be, because that's how we've survived. Now, in this weird world where we don't do the hunter-gatherer thing anymore, well, most of us don't. I had allotment for a little while. It's not quite the same.
Love an allotment.
But because we don't have to do that hunter-gatherer thing anymore, we've got a lot of time on our hands. So we seek value and validation and worth in different ways. And that often translates itself into family. It often translates itself into work. And if you don't feel like that when you're coming to work, this area where you spend so much time, it's a literal cultural event going to work. You know, it's if you saw ants do it, all signing in one place at 9 a.m., you'd think that's really weird. It's really weird that we do it as well. It is a cultural motivator. And so if you don't feel like when you're coming in to work that you're appreciated, respected, or that you have autonomy to do your job that you've been assigned to do, you will start developing a loss of morale there. You'll start making shortcuts. You'll start not caring, and that's terrible for an organization. It's terrible for a security function. So
you know,
yes.
you've given me a bit of hope. So for those watching who know my background, I went from being very money driven and was very successful at that, but very, very unhappy, even when I had lots of money and all the shiny things that everyone seems to think that we need. And it's only been the last 2.5, 3 years where I have found my purpose. And that purpose for me has involved helping other people, which leads completely into the reciprocity thing. The thing I've been the most scared of, Lianne, is earning money again and being wealthy again, because I thought that it might, I don't know, change the person I am now, take me back to my old ways before. But from what you're saying here, the fact that I found my purpose, it doesn't matter if I have money again now, because I'll have that satisfaction. Am I reading that right, or do I still need to be afraid?
As long as the purpose outlives the, I know what you mean, like the drive for money.
Yeah,
that is not a purpose in itself.
It's not. No.
No.
I thought it was for 30 years, and I can completely agree.
But as long as you know, there's no harm in the purpose you're driving towards being financially lucrative. There is no harm in that, you know. In fact, it's good that people are well paid in this industry and things like that. We do a tough job. There's loads of burnout. It's highly stressful. One thing I always get, I don't know if anyone else on the chat has, if they've ever sort of line managed anyone new coming into this industry. Usually within the first 3 weeks for newcomers, I get asked a question. And it's like, Lianne, I've lost a lot of sleep recently over some of this stuff. Like, I keep thinking I'm going to get hacked. I keep worrying about what I'm going to click on and things like that. I was like, it's normal. That paranoia is normal, and it will dissipate slightly. It's like you'll never lose it, but you'll stop losing sleep.
It shows you care as well, doesn't it? I think.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Let's jump into Dominic's question that's just come up, because this is one from speaking to hundreds of people in the community, something that comes up all the time and something that I struggle with as well. And it's this: how do you overcome the feeling of imposter syndrome? Great question, Dominic.
I mean, Dominic, if you can help me, I'll take it. I have imposter syndrome every day, every second day. Oh, utterly, absolutely, utterly. I'm constantly worried I'm going to be found out of this person who, this anthropologist who's dared to come in and be head of security operations in an organization, dared to go into other organizations and talk about security, even though my background wasn't that. I'm from a very working class background. The cards I dealt with at the start of my life, I wouldn't have ever predicted I would be here. Most of the people from my clique growing up, did end up on council estates, did end up, unemployed for most of it and things like that. And that was kind of like the lot in life for me. So I pinch myself every single day that I'm doing the things I'm doing. I don't know how I got here, but I'm very grateful. But in terms of overcoming it, I don't want to overcome it. I think it's a good reminder.
I think that, Lianne, I think there's a difference. There's a difference between imposter syndrome and staying humble, though, isn't there?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. But I want to sort of reiterate that I don't think I've ever spoken to anyone at any level, like even my boss, CISO, who doesn't have it. So I almost akin to it of that they say, everyone puts their trousers on one leg at a time, or everyone poops.
Everyone does that the same. Yeah, everyone pulls the trousers down and go to the toilet.
Great leveler, everyone feels the same thing. I think if you're passionate about what you do, if you're good to people the way you do it, there's two ways of going about things in this world. One, you can either bring people on the journey with you and help and support people at all rungs of the ladder, or the other one is you can be all for yourself, jump over people, stand on people's back to get to where you need to be. You can be successful in two ways, but it depends what path you want to go in. And I think if you do have imposter syndrome and you're doing it on the nice path, you're still a good person. So
and I think it's important to work out what your idea of success actually means, which I think a lot of us, me included, didn't do for a long time. Gareth's made a bit of a flippant comment there, which I want to actually focus on, because I don't like this statement, Gareth, and this isn't an attack at you, and I know you've made it as a jokey one, but what are your thoughts on this? Fake it till you make it.
I think fake it to yourself.
Yes, that's
don't
exactly,
be fraudulent.
that's exactly what I was trying to get to. You can fake it internally, but don't go faking it out there to everyone else, because you're going to get found out.
That's worse, isn't it?
It's worse, yeah.
So I like to do talks for people in my teams and stuff on personal brand, because I think it's really important. Now, personal brand has got me to where I am today. It's about posting and things, and it's about making connections, networking, doing things like this session here, and getting out there. Does that mean that when I write a post, I am not cringing inside completely? No, it doesn't. I literally die inside every time I post something, because I'm like, oh God, what are people going to think? But you're your own cheerleader.
Yeah.
Everyone else is really busy thinking about their own careers, their own success. Nobody's going to stand there and pat you on the head.
No.
You have to shout out about these things yourself.
Well, let's talk about this then. So I'm with you 100%. You have got to be your own cheerleader. But how do you get over, ignore, or combat, whatever terminology you want to use, the negativity that you get from some people? And you will get it. And I've had a lot of it the last few weeks. One comment I had on one of my posts is, I don't know why you're pretending to be an expert in cybersecurity. You don't know anything. Well, actually, I'm brutally honest that I'm not an expert in cybersecurity. I've never said that. But the question is, one, why do people feel the need to pick holes and drag you down? And two, how do you deal with that negativity and not jump on the keyboard and immediately respond? What are the techniques we can use, Lianne?
Yeah, so why people do it is quite nuanced. You know, they often say bullies will bully themselves, don't they? And there's also a fear. I think, in particularly for our industry, there's a fear about letting new people in. It's been a bit of a club for quite a long time.
Yeah,
I've had that. I've had people say, like, the security world doesn't have you in mind, Lianne.
yeah, me too.
You don't belong here. Talking about security in the way you do. But I think as the industry changes, that is changing for the better. And so what I see is one of the things to kind of help do that is when I bring on new people and things like that from different backgrounds. I'm very much quite a lot of my team are career retrainers. So people that do not have traditional security backgrounds, like ex-veterinarians, people who've worked as teachers and things like that. I think you need to start building the security culture that you want to see. And I don't mean security culture as in just organization. I mean as in us as an industry. So I'm trying to bring in loads of people that are going to make a nicer environment for all of us. And I think we are seeing that shift. And hopefully they'll pay it forward. Nice people will do nice things for other nice people, and it will just keep going. And then we'll see a shift in security people.
Yeah, because sorry, no, carry on.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, but what is interesting, though, is I think some of it stems from our language in general about victimization when it comes to security. So think about it. If my loved one got murdered, would my loved one be blamed as a victim? But when an organization gets hit by a sophisticated attack group, it's the company that gets blamed. It's almost the same narrative that you would say, she shouldn't have dressed like that.
Yeah.
Now, I know that there are circumstances that would cause an organization to be susceptible to attacks in a cybersecurity sense. I know that no one's perfect. No one is perfect. And we are all trying to do our very best. But yet the narrative we have in security is, let's fine the company. Let's run that company through the coals on social media in our analysis on it. It's all victim shaming. And I think that kind of spills out into how we talk to each other individually. It's really odd. And if we change that narrative into, let's support the victim, let's learn from what's happened, maybe we would all be safer.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's a few comments here. I'll bring up. One was a little way back, so let me just find it. It was, I think you might have a book coming out soon. Am I right in thinking that?
Yes. Yeah. So it's two-pronged thing. Well, actually, I've got two books. So I'm setting up a podcast in the summer. It's going to be called Compromising Positions.
Brilliant.
And it's where I interview people across organizations that do non-security roles and ask them their opinion on security. And that's to help the content of a book. And then the other book I'm writing is about how anthropology can be applied to business. It's a collection of other anthropologists talking about how they apply anthropology in their field, and mine will obviously be about cybersecurity. That draft is what I alluded to earlier. I've been given an extension.
Is that your deadline? Yeah.
First draft goes in August to Routledge, and then a few months after that, they do all their jiggery pokery. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll be able to keep up to date with both Compromising Positions and also the Routledge companion piece of how anthropology is applied.
It's very exciting. One from William here. You should give lessons to HR departments in the US and cover why non-technical people are still needed in cybersecurity. Completely agree. And I believe you are doing stuff like that at the moment, aren't you, Lianne?
Yeah. Career retrainers, they have been the absolute best hires I've ever had. I'll be honest with you. What they bring in terms of experience and understanding of an organization is just second to none. They've always been the best hires, in my opinion. Slightly biased, being a Richard himself.
Let me move you to the top, because this one's a larger statement. It'll cut your whole picture off. Richard Phillips, good to see you, my friend. With every job he's had, have faith in yourself, even if you're unsure or nervous, and don't be frightened to ask questions. I think that's a great point.
I think one thing I tell people is, if it frightens you, you should probably do it.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you on that. Always put yourself outside of your comfort zone. I think the only way I've ever achieved anything is by doing things I didn't want to do, is the honest answer. Next one is a thank you, and that's from Precious. Thank you, Lianne, for your honesty. I think we all completely concur with that. And then the big one that cuts off half my face, from Alana. Thanks, Alana. Dr. Jill Stoddard does a lot of research on imposter syndrome. So for anyone who was sort of engaged in that part of the conversation, her book comes out in September, Imposter No More, Overcome Self-Doubt and Imposterism to Cultivate a Successful Career. And I'm not sure who this one is. It just says LinkedIn user, and apologies if this offends anyone in the audience. It wasn't me who typed it. There are too many dick swingers out there, which I thought was quite thank you. Yeah. Richard Foster's jumped in with a couple. So the first one was in relation to when I was mentioning the negativity I'd had from people in the industry. And I want to just address that, actually. I've had far more positivity than I have negativity. And I think this industry is full of amazing people who are prepared to bend over backwards and help new people coming in. I mean, I've seen that firsthand very much. So it's the minority of people who are negative, I would say. And Richard very kindly asked, Richard's an ex-policeman, what's their address, Simon? Probably won't give you that, Richard, but thank you. And it's as said,
we always say it's put yourself in a room where someone would shout your name when there's opportunities going. Sometimes it's nice to put yourself in a room where someone would kick someone's head in for you.
That's brilliant. I'm going to use that phrase. And Itza said one thing she's noticed about this community, and it's been a huge difference. It seems like people are genuine and want to help you, not gatekeep. And I think Itza, you're absolutely right. Ignoring my comment about the negativity. My wife said to me, it's because some people don't like seeing other people succeed. And I think there is some of that. There's some of that in it as well. And then finally, the last comment, again, LinkedIn user, apologies, your name hasn't come up. It's an essential industry where diversity inclusion without exception is essential. And I completely agree with that. So 2 minutes left. Give our audience a massively inspiring message for me to close things out with. No pressure there, Lianne, whatsoever.
Yeah, what I'd really like your audience to take away from you today is just remember that behind every cable is a person, and that will be a user, your colleague, and even a hacker. So you must always keep it in mind.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on. We've had so many people tune in and the engagement's been fantastic. I'm very, very excited to read your books when they come out. I'll be following you on LinkedIn to do that. And I'm hoping, I've got a few events this year. I know you can't make the Manchester one. I think you've already got commitments for that. I'm pretty sure you said, but I have got other events coming up in the UK, and I'd love to get you along to one of those as a speaker if we can. I think people would love that too. So Lianne, it's been amazing. Thank you so much, and enjoy that bank holiday weekend. And now you've got the deadline extended to August. You can kick back and relax rather than worry about that, perhaps.
Oh no, this weekend will be dedicated. I'm keynoting for a talk in Berlin, one of my most favorite cities in the world. Luckily for devs, so I'm keynoting at a dev conference about security. So to me, that's a massive win. Never in a million years would I expect that, but they seem to like the cut of my jib. So let's see if I can convert some devs to security.
Well, do you know what? I think we all like the cut of your jib, and I love that expression. Love the cut of your jib, Lianne. And thank you so much for taking the time. Everyone who's tuned in, massive thank you as always for making this engaging. Have a great weekend, everyone. And Lianne, I hope to catch up with you again soon.
Speak soon. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.